What if the secret to remembering everything wasn't locked in your genes, but in your habits? And what if the students mastering it weren't in some distant lab, but in Japanese classrooms where memory is forged like a blade, not wished into existence? In a world drowning in distractions and forgetfulness, Japanese students have quietly mastered a set of ancient meets modern techniques that turn ordinary minds into memory machines. Their success isn't magic, it's method. From sacred rituals to scientific timing, from active recall to visual learning mastery, they've turned study into an art form and memory into a superpower. In this message, you'll discover exactly how they do it and how you can apply their timeless strategies to remember faster, deeper, and longer than ever before. Because memory isn't just about learning more, it's about becoming more. Now we talk about these 10 strategies to remember everything. Number 1, discipline is the silent architect behind every extraordinary memory. And for Japanese students, it is not an optional trait. It is the very foundation of their learning process. Their remarkable ability to retain vast amounts of information doesn't stem from innate genius, but from a meticulously cultivated structure that they follow with unwavering commitment. Discipline means waking up at the same time each day, dedicating fixed hours to focused study, and showing up consistently whether they feel motivated or not. While many people wait for the right mood to begin, Japanese students operate on habit, not emotion. They understand that memory is a product of repetition and environment, and without discipline, both suffer. By establishing strict study routines, where distractions like phones, noise, and interruptions are minimized, they condition their minds to enter a state of deep concentration. This discipline sharpens focus, and that focus becomes the fertile ground where memory takes root and thrives. Over time, their brains are trained to absorb, store, and retrieve information with increasing efficiency, simply because they show up for the process every single day. Their commitment is visible in their culture's emphasis on order, timing, and respect for the learning space. They treat their desks like sacred ground, approach each study session like a ritual, and honor their study materials as tools of personal growth. While others may dabble, Japanese students go all in, with precision. Their discipline doesn't stop at study sessions, it influences their sleep patterns, nutrition, and even the way they take notes. Everything is optimized for mental clarity and retention. In a world obsessed with shortcuts, their example reminds us that the real secret to remembering everything isn't a magic hack. It's showing up with full presence again and again. Discipline is not glamorous, and it's rarely fun in the moment, but it builds a foundation so strong that memory becomes not an effort, but a byproduct. If you want to remember like the best, begin not with flashy tools, but with quiet discipline, the kind that doesn't shout but delivers results that speak for themselves. Number 2, repetition is the mother of mastery, and no one exemplifies this better than Japanese students who have mastered the art of learning by embracing the power of doing the same thing over and over again, not out of laziness, but with strategic intensity. They understand that memory isn't built in a single sitting. It's constructed like a brick wall, one layer at a time, through deliberate repetition. Their system revolves around spaced repetition, a scientifically proven method that involves reviewing information at increasing intervals just before the brain is likely to forget it. This not only strengthens neural pathways but also turns short-term information into long-term knowledge. Unlike the common approach of last-minute cramming, which gives the illusion of learning but fades quickly, repetition trains the brain to treat information as vital, causing it to store it with deeper priority. Japanese students repeat vocabulary, math problems, historical facts, and concepts so many times that recall becomes automatic, almost like muscle memory. This method isn't passive. They don't just reread, they rewrite, rephrase, and recite their notes. By encountering the same material across different contexts, quizzes, writing exercises, oral recitations, they deepen the mental imprint. Each repetition isn't just a copy, it's a reinforcement, a reactivation of the neural connection. Even when they feel they've got it, they go back and review again, understanding that mastery doesn't come from familiarity, but from fluency. They don't wait for memory to fade. They anticipate forgetting and strike it down before it happens. This cycle of revisiting material, daily, weekly, monthly, cements learning into their long-term cognition. Their notebooks are often filled with neat, repeated summaries of the same content, written multiple times with evolving clarity. This isn't redundancy, it's refinement. Every repetition makes the concept clearer, tighter, and more integrated. They train their brains like athletes train muscles, with consistency, patience, and repetition until performance becomes second nature. In the same way a martial artist repeats a kata until their body remembers what the mind no longer has to think about, Japanese students repeat their studies until the information is part of who they are. If you want to truly remember, you don't need a better memory, you need better repetition. Because in the end, it's not the one who reads the most, but the one who repeats the smartest, who remembers forever. Number 3, active recall beats passive reading every single time. And this is one of the core strategies that gives Japanese students their mental edge. While many learners fall into the trap of rereading notes or highlighting pages, believing that recognition equals understanding, Japanese students engage their brains in a much more powerful way by testing themselves constantly. Active recall is the process of pulling information out of the brain without the aid of notes or textbooks, forcing the mind to retrieve rather than just recognize. This method strengthens memory far more effectively because it mimics the actual experience of needing to remember, like during an exam or real-world situation. Japanese students don't just glance at notes, they cover them and try to reconstruct what they've read. They close their books and write summaries from memory, recite aloud, quiz each other in study groups, and use flashcards not just to review, but to challenge themselves. This constant tug-of-war with their brain rewires their neural circuits, signaling that the information is important and must be kept. When you recall something actively, your brain creates stronger connections because it has to work harder. It's this mental resistance that builds real memory. Passive reading, on the other hand, is deceptive. It feels productive because the information looks familiar, but in reality, it's a shallow imprint that quickly fades. Active recall disrupts that illusion, exposing gaps in knowledge so they can be fixed before it's too late. Japanese students use tools like spaced recall cards, mock tests, and memory drills to turn recall into a daily practice. They've mastered the idea that forgetting is not failure, it's feedback. Every time they struggle to remember something, they see it as a signal to revisit and reinforce, not to give up. This method also trains confidence. The more you recall successfully, the more you trust your brain under pressure. Over time, information doesn't just sit in your mind. It lives there, ready to be summoned at will. If you want to remember like the Japanese do, stop scanning pages and start engaging in mental battle. Don't just read, recall. Don't just review, retrieve. Because the strongest memory isn't built when the eyes are open, it's built when the mind is searching, stretching, and strengthening itself through active effort. Number 4. Visual memory tools are weaponized in the Japanese learning system. Not used casually or occasionally, but deliberately, methodically, and with surgical precision. Japanese students have long recognized that the brain doesn't just remember words, it remembers images, colors, patterns, and shapes far more efficiently. This is especially evident in how they learn complex characters like kanji, which are not merely phonetic symbols, but visually intricate systems that require deep memory engagement. To master these, students turn to visual mnemonics, transforming abstract symbols into meaningful, vivid mental pictures that anchor the information in long-term memory. But it goes far beyond just kanji. They use mind maps, diagrams, charts, color-coded notes, and even draw tiny sketches alongside facts to make abstract information more concrete. Visual learners dominate because they turn ideas into imagery, and Japanese students know this well. They convert history, timelines into visual flows, scientific processes into pictorial cycles, and vocabulary into visual associations with objects, scenes, or stories. These aren't random doodles. They are memory weapons. Every image becomes a memory hook. For example, to remember a difficult English word, a student might draw a scene that symbolizes its meaning and tie it to a familiar image from their life or culture. These visual cues act as shortcuts in the brain, triggering entire paragraphs of information from a single drawing or symbol. Flashcards are also used with high visual impact, often designed with large, bold fonts, bright colors, and sometimes even with mini illustrations to help the mind latch onto more than just text. This kind of learning is multi-sensory. It doesn't rely solely on language, but leverages the full power of the brain's visual cortex. When the brain sees an image, it engages faster and retains longer, because visuals bypass the usual language filters and get stored directly in memory. That's why advertising works. And it's why this method works for students. Japanese learners know that if you can see it, you can remember it. They weaponize visual learning by making the invisible visible, the abstract tangible, and the complex simple. They turn every subject into a canvas and every lesson into a picture book for the mind. If you want to remember everything like they do, don't just write your notes, draw them, map them, color them, then describe them. Turn information into art and your brain will never forget it. Number 5. Distractions are seen as enemies of progress, and Japanese students create environments that respect concentration. Clean, quiet study places, phones silenced or removed, and clear time blocks dedicated solely to one task. They don't multitask because they understand that divided attention leads to divided results. Instead, they practice single tasking, the art of giving full mental energy to just one subject at a time, which increases both retention and understanding. Their school systems reinforce this with long, uninterrupted study sessions and cultural expectations that demand full presence, not just physical attendance. Even the way they take notes reflects this focus, neatly, with attention to detail, and often revised afterward to improve clarity. From an early age, they're taught to treat study time with the same respect an athlete gives to training or a monk gives to meditation. And just like a muscle, their attention span grows stronger through daily reps. 30 minutes of full focus today, 45 minutes tomorrow, building 2 hours of deep concentration without fatigue. They also use timing techniques like Pomodoro, short bursts of intense work followed by small breaks to maintain sharpness without burning out. What's crucial is their mindset. They expect focus to be hard, so they're not discouraged by difficulty. They lean into it, understanding that mental resistance is a sign they're training their attention, not a sign to give up. They also know how to recover it. If their mind drifts, they don't panic or quit. They gently return again and again, building resilience. Over time, this training rewires the brain to become more alert, more efficient, and more capable of blocking out noise, internal or external. It's also known, in a world dominated by distractions, Japanese students operate like warriors of attention, fully engaged in the moment and fiercely committed to the task at hand. If you want to remember more, learn faster and grow smarter, start where they do. Train your focus like a skill, sharpen it like a blade, and protect it like your future depends on it. Because it does. Number 6, learning is treated like sacred practice by Japanese students, not as a mere requirement or routine, but as a deeply respected and almost spiritual pursuit that deserves reverence, intention, and wholehearted presence. In Japanese culture, education is not just a pathway to success, it is a character-building journey, a moral responsibility, and a way of honoring one's family, teachers, and future. Students are taught from a young age to bow before entering the classroom, a physical expression of respect for the space where knowledge is shared. This reverence transforms how they approach learning. Study time is not something to rush through or get over with, but something to enter into with mindfulness and purpose. Their books are kept with care. Notes are written with precision, and even homework is approached with a sense of duty rather than resistance. They do not study only to pass exams. They study to grow, to understand, to master themselves. This sacred view of learning is what fuels their consistency. It's not about motivation, but about meaning. They are taught to see learning as a daily ritual, where the act of showing up to study is a form of self-respect and inner development. The environment itself supports this sacredness. Schools are clean, orderly, and quiet. Classrooms are structured to minimize distraction, and teachers are held in high regard, often seen as mentors and moral guides as much as academic instructors. There is a deep cultural belief that knowledge is a gift, not a burden, and that honoring it brings you closer to personal excellence and social contribution. This is why Japanese students can spend hours in silent concentration, not out of pressure, but out of purpose. Even their group study sessions are focused, disciplined, and respectful, often carried out in hushed tones with shared responsibility to help each other rise. When learning is sacred, procrastination feels like a form of disrespect, not just to the teacher or the test, but to the learner's own potential. And this mindset is transformative. It doesn't just improve memory, it elevates the entire learning experience, turning ordinary study sessions into powerful acts of growth. If you want to retain more, learn faster, and go deeper, shift your perspective. Stop treating learning like a task and start treating it like a sacred practice. Because when you honor knowledge, knowledge honors you back, with wisdom, clarity, and lasting success. Number 7. Breaks and timing are scientifically aligned in the study habits of Japanese students, who understand that mental endurance is not about pushing through fatigue, but about working with the brain's natural rhythms to maximize focus, energy, and retention. Unlike the popular misconception that longer hours equal better results, Japanese learners prioritize the quality of study over sheer quantity, using techniques like the Pomodoro method or structured study intervals to strike the perfect balance between intense concentration and timely restoration. Typically, they engage in 25-50 minutes of focused study, followed by short, intentional breaks of 5 to 10 minutes, just enough time for the brain to reset without losing momentum. This method leverages the brain's ultradian rhythm, which naturally cycles between high and low states of alertness every 90 minutes. When a student takes a break, before their attention dips too far, they preserve mental sharpness and avoid burnout, allowing them to re-engage with more clarity and less resistance. Japanese students are trained to see breaks not as interruptions, but as essential tools for learning, micro recoveries that help encode what was just learned into long-term memory. They step away from their desks, stretch, take a short walk, or engage in light physical activity that boosts blood flow to the brain and refreshes cognitive energy. These strategic pauses also allow for subconscious processing, where the brain quietly organizes and consolidates information while the student is doing something seemingly unrelated. Even hydration and nutrition are timed with intention. Green tea or water is sipped during breaks, not while studying, to keep focus uninterrupted. Their awareness of timing extends to the larger picture as well. Reviewing material just before sleep, for instance, enhances retention thanks to the brain's memory consolidation during rest. Similarly, they plan reviews in spaced intervals, 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, capitalizing on the spacing effect to make forgetting less likely. Every element of their schedule is built on respect for how the brain naturally functions, not just on cultural discipline or academic pressure. By aligning study and rest with biology, they don't just learn harder, they learn smarter. If you want to replicate their success, don't just study non-stop. Study in sync with science. Time your focus, protect your energy, and honor your brain's rhythms, because the right break at the right time is not a luxury, it's a strategy. Number 8. They create personal study spaces that are clean, orderly, and free from distraction, treating the physical environment as sacred ground where focus and growth occur. Before beginning, many follow a pre-study routine, perhaps tidying their desk, lighting a small incense, preparing a warm drink, or reviewing their goals for the session. These seemingly small actions aren't about superstition, they are psychological cues, signaling to the brain that it's time to shift into a deeper state of attention. Just like athletes have warm-ups and musicians tune their instruments, Japanese students tune their minds through ritual, priming themselves for peak cognitive performance. This sense of ritual continues throughout the study process. They write their notes with deliberate care, often using color-coding systems or specific pens to organize their thoughts with visual harmony. Some even have preferred notebooks or materials they only use during serious study sessions, items that carry emotional and mental weight because of their association with focus and learning. Repetition itself becomes a ritual. Rewriting notes, reviewing flashcards, or reading aloud becomes rhythmic, almost meditative. Their schedules are often structured the same way every day, allowing the brain to fall into a natural flow that enhances memory retention and reduces decision fatigue. When learning is ritualized, it becomes easier to access the same mental state each time. Just as a prayerful setting invites reflection, a ritualized learning space invites concentration. Japanese students also personalize these rituals to keep them meaningful. Some may include inspirational quotes, small charms, or pictures of their goals to reinforce motivation and commitment. The repetition of these actions conditions the brain to associate studying with focus, purpose, and even calmness, making it easier to return to that mental state over time. By making learning sacred through ritual, they transform what many dread into something they respect and even enjoy. You want to remember more? Stay consistent and perform at your best. Don't just study, create a ritual around it. Treat your study time like a sacred appointment with your future, and watch how your mind rises to meet that level of respect and intention. Number 9. Memory is strengthened through teaching others. And Japanese students fully embrace this powerful principle by turning learning into a shared, interactive process rather than a solitary struggle. They understand that the deepest form of learning happens not when you passively absorb information, but when you actively explain it to someone else. This method, often referred to as the Feynman technique, is a cornerstone of their academic success. Because when you teach, you are forced to clarify, simplify, and organize knowledge in a way that deepens your own understanding. In Japanese study culture, peer-to-peer teaching is common, whether through structured study groups, classroom collaborations, or informal sessions among friends. Students frequently review lessons together, take turns explaining complex concepts, quiz each other, and discuss what they've learned, not just to help one another, but to sharpen their own mental grasp. When they explain a math formula, a history event, or a grammar rule, they must recall it from memory, break it down in their own words, and respond to follow-up questions, all of which reinforce retention and expose any gaps in understanding. Teaching turns passive knowledge into active recall, which, neurologically, strengthens neural connections far more than mere rereading ever could. The process also creates accountability and emotional engagement. Knowing you have to explain something to others raises your level of seriousness and precision. Japanese students don't wait until they've mastered a topic to start teaching. They learn by teaching, often discovering insights mid-explanation that they missed during solo study. This approach also cultivates humility and continuous learning because it becomes clear very quickly whether you truly understand something or are just pretending to. Even parents and siblings may be involved in this process, listening patiently as students rehearse aloud, turning the home into a dynamic learning space. The act of verbalizing knowledge helps encode it more deeply in memory because it adds an auditory and kinesthetic layer to what is typically a visual or mental task. If you want to remember everything like the Japanese do, don't just memorize in silence. Speak it out loud, explain it, and teach it to others. Because when you teach, you not only serve others, you sharpen yourself. The teacher always learns the most, and in the process, the memory becomes yours forever. Number 10. They respect the power of consistency over cramming. And this quiet discipline is one of the most defining characteristics of Japanese students' remarkable ability to remember and retain knowledge long-term. Unlike the frantic, last-minute studying that many students around the world rely on, where information is stuffed into the brain like overpacked luggage before an exam, Japanese learners invest in small, daily sessions of intentional study that compound over time like interest in a bank account. They understand that the brain, like the body, needs repeated exposure in manageable doses to grow stronger. Just as you wouldn't try to build muscle by lifting weights for 10 hours once a month, they don't try to master knowledge through marathon cramming sessions. Instead, they engage in daily, focused review, 15 minutes here, 30 minutes there, knowing that these consistent efforts are far more effective than hours of stressful, overloaded cramming. This steady rhythm of review keeps the memory active and prevents the forgetting curve from taking hold. Japanese students incorporate spaced repetition, returning to previously learned material days and weeks later to lock it into long-term memory. And because they are not overwhelmed or panicked, they can approach each study session with more clarity, confidence, and calm,